under their feet, literally.
Where they're subject to flagrant abuse by their own people.
They're subject to flagrant abuse by their people and, above all, by the occupation. That's the most important thing.
You talk about justice. Can I just remind you, you talk about justice. The International Committee of Jurists who visited the occupied territories recently said that several legal systems in the occupied territories now risk becoming a reality because of the squabbling between Fatah and Hamas. And if this were to occur, it would endanger the rights of Palestinians and seriously impede the emergence of a democratic, viable, and independent Palestinian state. And you're saying this is not of relevance to the people living there? It's of daily relevance.
I'm saying there are two different administrative systems and legal systems in the occupied territories. One system applies to Israeli settlers, and another, much harsher system, the system of military
law. We're talking about Hamas and Fatah trying to set up different justice systems. That's what the ICJ is talking about.
What overrides all of that is the Israeli administration of injustice, not justice.
Why does it override it? You don't think people who inflict this kind of misery on their own people are at risk of becoming the Palestinians' own worst enemy?
No, because...
Not even at risk of it?
Because the Palestinians aren't those 6,000 people. The Palestinians are 10 or 11 million people.
All right, Saree, Makdisi, thank you very much indeed. We're going to turn it over to the audience now for some questions. I want to remind you of the motion that this House believes that Palestinians risk becoming their own worst enemy. Okay, I'm going to take a question in the third row there, please. You, sir. Yeah.
You talk about conspiracies and nepotism in the Palestinian government, but don't you think these conspiracies are basically initiated by the same people who fueled and funded the Zionist movement after the Second World War?
Munther Dajani, take that.
Actually, it takes two to tango. If we didn't have people who were corrupt, who were actually amicable for corruption, we won't have corruption. It takes a guy to open his hand for the corruption to take place. It takes a guy to accept the corruption. There are a lot of people in the Palestinian National Authority who refuse to be corrupt. And they are the people who survived all the politics of corruption. And they are the ones now who are becoming, from the second stage to the first stage, they are becoming the front runners. And everybody knows them. And everybody is recommending that we reform. And when we talk about reform, we are talking about bringing the people who are backstage to the front stage so they can actually take over.
Did you want to say something briefly on this?
I want to say something quickly, which is that, just to put this on the record also, all of this discussion about the Palestinian Authority neglects, we have to bear in mind that the PA was created during the Oslo Accords not as the foundation for an independent Palestinian state, but rather as an administrator for the Israelis to maintain their occupation into the future, which is exactly what has happened since 1993 and 1995 when the PA was created, right? The occupation never stopped.
Akram Baker.
Saree, the PA, you're right about that, but the fact is that the PA was created so that the PLO, and the PLO, to go back also to your question, is that they survived under horrible bombardment in Beirut in 1982. The Palestinian National Movement has always survived. We are now at the cusp of true collapse, and not only because of the Israeli crackdown and the death and destruction ridden by the Israeli occupation, which is the foremost reason for all of this. But the fact is that the PA should be dissolved.
I agree.
It should be dissolved today, not tomorrow, because it has no use. It has completely usurped our strength and our aspirations, and the PLO is now close to being a defunct organization, and that is where, I'm sorry, Leila.
Unusual level of agreement across the divide, but not from you, Hind.
No, but you don't cancel the PA and you don't provide an alternative. Please tell me, what is the alternative plan? I mean, who's going to provide education and health?
Hind, what kind of authority?
Services?
Abu Mazen cannot go buy a falafel in Ramallah unless he has authorization from the Israelis.
We are completely...
I lived there.
We are under occupations. We have no illusions. The Palestinian Authority is not a state, and we have no sovereignty. But for God's sake, we're trying to build sovereignty. We're trying to get to a life that is dignified.
I'm going to take a question from the gentleman right at the top, please. You've got your hand up. You, sir. Yeah.
Good evening. Don't you think the Palestinians are punished because they've chosen the democratic path, because they elected Hamas? They are punished because they've reached this situation and they chose those people.
Akram Baker.
After the elections, I sat for months defending Hamas publicly, saying that they have the right to govern. They won the elections fair and square. However, they have squandered their right to lead by lifting arms against their fellow Palestinians in Gaza. They have forfeited their right to leadership by slaughtering hundreds of people in Gaza. It is unacceptable, and they have just as Fatah has been running into the arms of the United States and Israel for the past 6, 7 years, 8 years, Hamas has run into the arms of Iran in the exact same way, and I do not accept any of that from either side.
Hind, Khoury, do you want to say something?
Now, this is a very simplified argument. I mean, and first, I want to comment on corruption. I mean, you can't speak of the Palestinian Authority and all leadership like they're all corrupt. There were cases of corruption, but truly, people work to build institutions. It's not easy under occupation. So please, let's look at the wider pictures. It's much more complicated than